incidentally, this week's Torah portion is Mishpatim. And the only place that's mentioned in the Zohar, you know what the Zohar? The only place that's mentioned in the Zohar that mentions the concept of reincarnation is in Parshas Mishpatim, is in the laws of Mishpatim, in this week's portion. And it's called The Secret of Reincarnation. If you're familiar a little bit with the Torah reading this week, it's a very practical, mundane reading of the Torah. It seems to be very practical and mundane. It deals with a lot of issues between man and man and a person. Mishpatim, laws, civil laws, the civil contract of the Torah between how men are supposed to interact with each other. And if a person damages another person, God forbid, and hurts another person, what do you have to do, how do you pay? Very mundane things. And this is where the Zohar chooses to speak about laws and the principle of reincarnation. So there's a little story, there's an anecdote that I want to tell you is like this. There was a Jew called the Baal Shem Tov. Remember the Baal Shem Tov? Okay. So the Baal Shem Tov was a great master, a great teacher, and he had a student called DovBer, the Maggid of Mezrich. He was a primary student. He became the teacher after the Baal Shem Tov passed away. And the Maggid, when he was a younger man, once was reading this text about reincarnation in the Zohar, Parshas Mishpatim, and he came to the Baal Shem Tov and he said, "Please explain me the secret of reincarnation." So the Baal Shem Tov told him that instead of explaining to you verbally, I'm going to show it to you in real life. I'm going to show how this plays out. What I'm going to tell you to do, you cannot participate or involve yourself or do anything, just to be a passive observer of the experience. And he tells the Baal Shem Tov tells the Maggid, that I want you to travel outside the city, and there's an empty field. That's okay. There's an empty field, and you should sit on one edge of the field and just observe what's going on on the field. Sit there from morning till evening, and then in the evening come back to me and I'll explain you what you saw. So the Maggid goes to this field, and he sits in this open field, and a few minutes after he's sitting there, he sees from the other edge of the field is a beautiful tree with nice shade, and this person comes by, and he looks very tired, and he has a belt, a money belt, full of gold, jewelry, and silver, and he takes off his belt, and he puts it on the ground, and he takes a nap under the shade. Okay. This is person number one. An hour later, the guy gets up, and he gets up in a big rush, and he forgets his money on the ground, and he runs off. But remember, Baal Shem Tov told him, you're not supposed to say anything, do anything, just observe. So he doesn't say anything. Half hour later, person number two comes by, and is walking through the field, and he sees this belt, this cash, this stash full of money. And he looks inside, and he looks to see if there's any name on it, and he calls out and says, anyone own this? There's no name, there's no notes. And he screams out, does anyone own this money? Everyone's quiet. So he picks it up, and he became a rich man overnight. Okay. Another 20 minutes later, a third guy comes by, looks very tired, he lies down under the tree to take a nap. Meanwhile, person number one remembered that he lost his money. So he comes back to the tree, and he sees a guy lying there. So he wakes the guy up and says, where's my money? So I don't know what you're talking about. He says, the silver, my coins, my gold, this is my whole life savings, everything's here. You're a thief. He says, I'm just lying here. I'm a simple guy. I don't know anything. And the guy, this is the way the story goes, the guy gives him a beating. Yeah? The guy number one really doesn't believe the guy number two that's lying. The number three is lying there. And hits him to get the money out of the guy's all his possessions. Okay, the guy sees he's not getting any money. He shakes him out. There's no money. He leaves. Okay. The Maggid is very disturbed by the story, and he goes back to the Baal Shem Tov and says, okay, this is what I saw. Tell me what happened. The Baal Shem Tov says like this, that in a previous life, previous incarnation, person number one and person number two were business partners. And ends up being that there was an argument about who owed who money. And it was clear that these two people, person number one, person number two, which in their previous life, person number one owed person number two a lot of money. So, but he couldn't get the person number two. Person number one was a tough guy. Couldn't say to get the money out of him. So they decided they're going to go to court. This was in a little shtetl in Europe. There was no courts. They went to the rabbi. The rabbi was not such a good rabbi. They went to the rabbi. And they started telling the story. You owe me money. I owe me money. This, that. And the rabbi is listening to the story. It's pretty clear. It's obvious to everybody that person number one owes a lot of money to person number two, and he's a thief. He's listening to the story. Meanwhile, person number one realizes that he's going to lose the case and he's going to lose a lot of money. So he slips the rabbi a few rubles. You know, not even saying he was a good rabbi. He slipped him some rubles, and the pockets became a little more filled. And the rabbi says, "But from the other perspective, if you really think about it, maybe it's possible that he doesn't owe him the money." And he really didn't have to owe him the money. Said Baal Shem Tov, that person number one had to come back to this world to return the money that he owed to person number two. So he asked him that, who's person number three?
The rabbi.
The rabbi. So everyone got exactly what they deserved. This is a very peculiar story, and I'll tell you why it's an interesting story, because this type of reincarnation is very unusual. This means that a person comes back to this world to rectify something that was done in the past life. That means your whole overarching purpose why your soul came out of this world is just to undo something that you did in your past life. This is not a usual thing at all. 99% of the times that souls come down to this world, they do not come down to fix things that were done in the past life. We'll explain you this in greater detail now. But before we understand this conversation, we have to understand what is a soul. What is a soul? Talk about a soul. What does it mean? What is a neshama? And the truth is that the question is even a little bit deeper, because when we talk about a soul coming down to this world, and let's say we'll talk about a person passing on and the soul surviving this life. What is the soul that survives? So you say a person passes on and the neshama survives. What is the neshama? So I'm willing to hear ideas over here. What is the soul that we say that survives? What is the neshama? What do you think the neshama is? Anyone have any inkling what the soul is? What it is? What could it be? What's the soul that survives? The soul that is what? Anyone?
Part of God.
Part of God. Okay, that's a good word. So the soul is a part of God, and therefore, since it's a part of God, what does it do, the soul?
Goes back to God.
Goes back to God. What does it do when it's in the body?
It's supposed to emulate God.
You're supposed to emulate, so that you're emulating. But what does it do to the body? We would assume it is part of God.
Animates the body.
Animates the body. I guess let's just say with that simple interpretation, if it's part of God, which is part of the creator.
Slips the body.
That's another conversation. We'll say that the soul is part of the divine life force, part of the creator, the energy of the creator. So it's part of God. It's the energy that gives life to the body. Okay, this analogy would be similar, and I want you to think about this. This would be similar to saying that you imagine you have a computer, yeah, and you have all the database. You wrote your whole life story is written on this computer, and you have all the information. Let's say, I don't know, today it's probably on your iPhone and everything. It has exactly all the context you have to have, and all the people that you know, and where they live, and you have no brain. Everything is stored in this little gadget. And one day, your computer breaks. You go to the store. I don't know if people do this anymore, but people fix computers. But let's say, imagine you go to the store, your computer completely erased. It's erased. All the information is erased. You come to the person, the tech guy, and he says, "Great news. We couldn't salvage any of the information that's on the hard drive, but we managed to salvage the plug. The plug. So if you want, we can take the plug and we can put it into another computer and it'll reboot a new computer. Would that do any good for anybody? Would you be happy with that? Obviously not. It would mean nothing to you, right? Okay, so everything in the hard drive is erased and you got the plug to survive. So let's think about this in the body and with the soul. If we say, let's think about this for a second, that the soul is the animating force that gives the body its energy, that animates the body. It's the divine life force that animates the body. So it would be similar to like an electric current. In an analogy, it's the electric current, it's the charge that charges the body. Okay, great. So the body dies, and what survives is the current. Okay, so what does it have to do with me? The current is animating me, right? So I just want to articulate this a little bit more. So we have to understand when we talk about what does it mean, the soul, and what does it mean that it survives, and that's the real question will be, what does it mean to be in touch with our soul? To be connected with our soul. Yeah.
Based on Targum that says, exactly, Ruach Mamala, I realize now that Ruach Mamala does not mean simply the power of speech, it's the power of expression of oneself.
Okay, that's
so it needs, it's software in the sense that it needs hardware in order to. It doesn't mean only speech. All of one's creative.
Okay, so let's go one step at a time. Let's go one step at a time. Let's I think maybe we should we'll do with the questions. We'll make some type of time cut off of time, and then we'll take questions. We'll open them up. I'm going to say an hour or something, and then we'll figure it out what's the next stage. And someone will tell me when we're approaching that time. So, and if you have questions, write it down, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. If you look at the beginning, we can start with this. If we look at the beginning of the Torah, where the Torah describes the creation of the human being, the beginning of Genesis, the beginning of Bereshit, the Torah describes creation. So if you're a little bit familiar with the story, the Genesis story, you'll see that there's actually, the Torah describes two narratives of the creation of the human being. The human being is created twice, apparently. There's chapter number 1 and chapter number 2. In chapter number 1, the first chapter of Bereshit, which concludes with Shabbos, right? The days of creation of Shabbos. The name Hashem, which is Yud, a Hey, and a Vav, and a Hey, does not appear in the Torah. Bereshit bara, in the beginning, was created Elokim. Elokim creates. Right? Bereshit bara Elokim. Then the Torah has 32 times the word Elokim appears in the first narrative of the creation story, which incidentally corresponds to the teeth, the 32 teeth that a person has, which Elokim is connected to teeth, yeah.
Interesting.
The name Elokim is connected to one reality. Then in creation number 2, it speaks about that Adam goes to sleep. Everyone's familiar with the story, right? And Vayavol Hashem Elokim Tardei al Adam. Hashem Elokim makes Adam fall asleep, and then he takes Echad Mitzaloisa, one of his sides, and then he creates a female, right? And then Adam wakes up and says, Zoisapam, this time it's flesh by flesh and bone by bone, therefore he calls her Isha, and she becomes his wife. This is in simple reading the story. In chapter number 2, there's an important verse that says, Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim, that he blew into his nostrils a breath of life. Who blew into his nostrils a breath of life? The name Hashem. Okay, so we have to understand what the difference between the name of Hashem is and the name of Elohim. Are you familiar with this?
Can you just say the name of can you say the pasuk again? Vayad Bek.
Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. Vayipach apav nishmas chaim. He blew into his nostrils a breath of life. Okay? Now if you look also, I'm just testing you, how does God create the world in the Torah? What's the medium through which creation occurs through? What's the medium? Speech, right? Right? God says, let there be light. Vayomar Hashem yihar, vayihar. Hashem says, let there be light, and there's light. In chapter 1, number 1, creation only occurs through speech. In chapter number 2, there's a new form of creation, which is creation through
Air, through
breath. Breath. Okay? So there's ruach, that is wind. So there's a creation through speech, which occurs in chapter 1, and there's a creation with ruach, which is wind, which is created in chapter 2. The other distinction is that in chapter 1, you only have the name Elohim, and chapter 2, you have also the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Now let me just explain to you very quickly what these two names represent. The name Elohim, I'm saying it with a K, but it's an H, right? The name Elohim is, first of all, it's a very strange name because it's plural, right? Elohim in Hebrew means gods, if you just want to translate this in simple language, which is a very strange way to refer to God, as God's Elohim. That's one thing. Numerically, the word Elohim is 86. If you're familiar with the numeric values, so you take the letter Aleph is 1, and Lamed is 30, and A is 5, and Yud is 10, Mem is 40, you have 86. Okay? 86 is the same numeric value for the word Hateva, which is nature. Okay, so whenever the Torah wants to describe something that's part of the cycle of nature, the Torah uses that name Elohim. Okay, because that's the energy of creation. That's the finite expression of the Ein Sof, of the infinite one, that brings about the creation of physical manifestation, of time, space, consciousness, which is physicality. This is the name Elohim. The name Yud, Hey, and a Vav and a Hey spell the words Haya, which means it was, Hoveh means that it is, Yeh means that it will be, which means past, present, and future. The Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, which is also called Hashem, the name, represents infinity. Okay? So there is one dimension of creation which is connected to the finite expression of the divine, and one dimension of creation that's connected with the infinite expression of the divine. Name Hashem and name Elohim. Is everyone following along? Mm-hmm. Okay. In the first narrative of creation, when it speaks about the creation of man, is man created separate from woman, or woman created separate from man? Or they created simultaneously, remember? Simultaneously. The way the Torah describes the creation of Adam in the first creation story in chapter number 1, Zachar v'Nekeva bara osam. Male and female, he created them. Adam and Eve were created simultaneously. Okay? In one creation. Let's follow this narrative. In chapter 2, Adam goes to sleep. Who's Adam?
He's Adam and Chava.
It's Adam and Chava. You're following? So, because chapter 1, Adam and Eve are created simultaneously, when it says that Adam goes to sleep, and this is the big misconception, when it says that Adam goes to sleep and creates Chava, there's a parallel narrative which Chava goes to sleep and creates Adam. Because they're each creating each other. Because Adam is actually Adam Chava, and they're each creating the opposite. So in the first narrative, Adam and Eve are part of one entity. In the second narrative, Adam and Eve are two separate entities. And they're created in a dream state. The same root words, when it speaks about the creation of Adam and Eve in chapter number 1, which means, and it says that Adam is created B'tzalmenu kidmutenu, right? In our likeness and in our image. the same root letters appear in the second story where Adam/Eve creates Adam/Eve. When there was a tardema, which means a slumber, which the root of the letters is Daled Mem, right? Which is Dimsenu, like done. And then Saloisa, which is his side, is the root letters Itzel, which is Salmedu. You're following the parallel here?
Yeah.
Okay? So the story in chapter 2 mirrors the story in chapter 1. Just like in chapter 1, Adam and Eve are created in the divine image and likeness. In chapter 2, Adam/Eve are each created in their own likeness. Which means Adam created Chava in his own likeness, and Chava created Adam in her likeness. Okay? These two beings...
Would you unpack that last one a little bit?
There's so much to talk about, so we'll take questions. You understand that a little superficially? Sort of?
On a verbal level.
Okay, so good. So let's
Just a very technical thing, the parallel to Tardema was what word again?
Hussein.
Mutena?
The same dollar. Okay, I don't know if everyone's familiar with Hebrew and everyone's following along, but we'll get to the gist of the idea. The idea is like this.
Not everyone, not
everyone's following? Okay, so let's try to simplify this idea. Very simple, without actually the letters. The basic structure is like this. If Adam and Eve are created in chapter 1 simultaneously, that means they're connected continuously. If Adam and Eve are created as two separate beings, then the way the Torah describes this relationship is that Eve, Chava, from the perspective of Adam, is an Ezer Kenegdoi, a helper against him. Which means, if we had to imagine this, Adam and Eve are created like this. Okay, just imagine, this is called back-to-back. In Hebrew it's called achar ba'achar, back-to-back relationship. Then they are created like this, which is face-to-face relationship. So back-to-back the relationship is a very nice relationship. Do you know why? Because wherever one goes, the other one follows. Okay, so wherever you go, your spouse follows, or your other half follows. That's a back-to-back relationship. Face-to-face relationship is a nice relationship because it's a genuine encounter. You're actually facing the other person. The downside of that is that each one will just move away, right? Okay, so we'll have to understand these two paradigms, which is a back-to-back relationship versus a face-to-face relationship. We're just giving you a bunch of layers of understanding. Let's go back a further layer. In chapter number 1, because Adam and Eve are created with the name Elohim, which we said the name Elohim is connected with the natural world, the physical world, the manifest, finite universe, Adam and Eve in chapter number 1 do not yet have a higher dimension of soul. They are created like animal. Okay. Therefore, the way the Torah describes this being is she is created on the level of Elohim, part of the natural cycle of the universe. Just like there are cats, there are dogs, there's another evolved species that's called human. This human being is just another predator in the list of all the predators, or the list of all the creation. This is part of the cycle of life. This being, Adam and Eve in creation number 1, is connected to his or spouse back to back. Then creation number 2 occurs where they're facing each other face to face. So there's a breaking apart of these two in order to face each other. I'll give you a very simple analogy and then we'll move further. The simple analogy is like a child. A parent with a child. A parent with a child is a back-to-back relationship. Because you're the parent, the child's the child, and wherever you go, that's where the child follows you. You don't ask your 2-year-old child, do you want to go on vacation or not? I mean, you could ask them, but you're not going to really listen to them. You decide what you want to do. Slowly, if you want to have a relationship with your child or your parent, it's the same way. You can have a back-to-back relationship with your parent, and you can be 50 years old and still have a back-to-back relationship with your parent, which your parent thinks that they control your life, and whatever they want to do, they tell you to do, and you have to do it. And your relationship with them is that you're completely dependent on them for their, I don't even mean this on the financial level, but it could be emotionally or whatever it is, completely dependent on them. And wherever they move, that's where you move. And it's nice because you're always attached to them. But that's not a genuine relationship. A more genuine relationship is when there are two people that are face to face, each one as an independent person, and they both encounter each other. They're choosing to have an encounter with each other. That's called a face-to-face relationship. To have a face-to-face relationship, you have to have free choice. Right? Because if you have a back-to-back relationship with anybody, then you don't have choice. That's the definition of a back-to-back relationship. You're working without choice. You're just following the other person. It can be a parent, and it can necessarily be even a person that you love. It can be someone that you're in a deep relationship with. If every time the person that you're in a relationship with says, should we do this, and you say yes, whatever you want, I will do, that's a back-to-back relationship. Because you're not really encountering the other person. The person says, should we go here? You say yes. Should we go to do this? You say yes. Anything you want there. Whatever you want, I do. That's a terrible relationship. Because that's a relationship between a parent and a child. That's a back-to-back relationship.
Presumably God knows that as well.
Of course, 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. 1 second. The relationship in the back-to-back relationship is that there is no freedom to choose the relationship. Okay, so this is chapter number 1, chapter number 2. Chapter number 2 is where Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. Hashem blows into his nostrils a breath of life. Which means that Adam is vested, and Adam doesn't mean Adam. Adam means Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Chava are vested with a soul. What does it mean that they are vested with a soul? They're giving a dimension that's transcendent of the animal kingdom. What does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean that we're transcendent of the animal kingdom? It's our ability to have free choice. Right? That's the Ruach level, that we could create our reality, or we could choose our reality. We can say, I don't have to just go to the watering hole because all the other animals are just going. That I don't have to just do that because everyone else is doing it, but I'm making a free choice what I want to do with my life. That's a higher dimension than in the cycle of creation. We're going to do one further step, if everyone's okay. Everyone's okay? Everyone got it? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we'll talk about what the soul is, because we started this whole conversation trying to understand what the soul is. What is this spark? Adam and Eve, when they're placed in the Garden of Eden, they're told that they can eat from the entire garden. Of all trees you shall eat, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge. You're familiar with the story? Which is the Eitz Hadas. You can eat from all the trees, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge. But if you read this very clearly and very slowly, the verse says, from all the trees you shall eat, just don't eat from the tree of knowledge, which is a contradiction in terms. Mm-hmm. If you say you can eat from all the trees, then you can eat from all the trees. What does it say not to eat from the tree of knowledge? So the deeper understanding is like this. You can eat from everything, just don't eat from something. You follow? You can eat from everything, just don't eat from something. Everything is the tree of life. Something is a tree of knowledge. The moment we make a distinction and we say, I would like this over that, that's already a tree of knowledge decision. You follow? Mm-hmm. If I live in the tree of life reality, and I'm not saying this is a pristine level, we'll see why. If I live in the tree of life reality, I don't make choices. If I live in the tree of knowledge reality, I'm constantly making choices. I would like to have this for dinner and not that for dinner. I like this person and I don't like so much that person. That's toiv v'ra, good and evil, good or bad. I'm living in a place of distinction. So the narrative, the Torah says, you can eat from everything, which is tree of life, just don't eat from something. The moment you eat from something, you say, I like this food, you're leaving the paradigm of the tree of life and entering into the paradigm of the tree of knowledge. Now what that means we have to really unpack, because what does that mean? Is it a positive thing to eat from the tree of knowledge, or a negative thing to eat from the tree of knowledge? Are we supposed to be, a child lives, certainly in a very young age, lives in a place of paradise. They live in the tree of life reality where they don't have to make any choices. Why? Because they have a back-to-back relationship with their parents, and the parents are making their choices, which is very comforting. At some point in your maturity, you realize you can't rely on your parents, or you can't rely on everybody else to make choices. You're going to have to make your own choices. And it's painful, because all of a sudden you have to grow up. And you have to make choices. So making a choice is leaving the paradise state of the tree of life and entering into the dualistic state of the tree of knowledge. So that's a maturity, which would suggest that it's something that's positive, right? It's healthy part of the development of the human being is that we leave for the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. So let's hold that thought for 1 second, and let's go to another few midrashic images, then we'll understand Kabbalistically how this works in terms of our soul. The sages of the Talmud and the Medrash, when they talk about the body of Adam, are you familiar a little bit with the way some of these things are described? Do you ever hear this idea that Adam's body stretched from one end of the universe, you heard this? Stretched from one end of the universe to the other. Or that his body was completely transparent, that his skin was shining, his body was covered in nail, his fingers were completely attached. Do you ever hear any of this imagery? Okay, these are some of the midrashic sources that speak about Adam in a very strange way. This long body that stretches from one end of the earth to the other, completely covered in nail, no fingernails. No separation of fingers.
He was covered in nail, like fingernail?
Yeah, like fingernail. His whole body is covered in like a transparent coat of light. His body is shining through his fingernail, and his fingers are all attached. They're webbed together. It's a very strange imagery. Why did the sages have this? Why are they telling us these very strange imagery of Adam? And the truth is that the depth of it is like this: that Adam, before he eats, she eats, they eat from the tree of knowledge, exists within the tree of life. Because the Torah wants to describe what the tree of life means, it says they didn't need fingers. Fingers was already separation, where you're already making distinctions. You have to pick something up, not pick something up. But if you're spoon-fed, you don't need your fingers. When the sages say that her body stretched from one end of the universe, it means there was no separation. It doesn't mean this on a literal level. It means that they live in a tree of life reality. The best way to describe that would be like a little child. That he's completely taken care of, and she's taken care of by his parents, and he lives in the tree of life. It's a perfect state. Once Adam, Eve eat from the tree of knowledge, which is the world of separation, right? Where you're making distinctions, duality, two. So the way the sages of the Talmud describe it is that Adam's body shrinks. All of a sudden he has fingers. Everything changes in the dynamic of his body, which means that Adam now is entering into the world where you have to make choices. Where there's good and there's bad. There's something that you like and something that you dislike. You have to go to the right or to the left, and you have to make that choice. This is the way it's explained in the sources of the Talmud. Now let's understand what this means on a Kabbalistic source. But before we do that, we have to get back to the soul. So what is the soul? We said the soul. So now we went in this whole conversation. What is the soul? What is this?
You can explain the chazals about the nails and all that.
It means a separation.
Okay.
The body becomes separate. It means it becomes smaller and separated. It's functioning in the world of duality, of separation. The 5 fingers corresponds to the 5 senses. I don't know if you know this. This is a medieval Jewish idea. That if you have to suck your thumb, I'm not saying you should suck your fingers, but taste is connected with the thumb, and your ears are connected to your pinky, and just think about the different parts of your body where you put the fingers in, and that's connected to different parts of the senses. Anyways, that's a totally bizarre thing. The idea is that the fingers are connected to the world of the senses, and the senses is the world of separation. If I'm looking at one thing, by definition, I'm looking at one and not something else. If I'm hearing one thing, I'm hearing one thing, not something else. I'm touching the same thing. So all the senses function in the world of separation. That's why I say the 6th sense. The 6th sense means the world of of non-duality, the world of the tree of life. Okay, so the senses are connected with the tree of knowledge. Let's understand the idea of the soul. So let's try to make this conversation very simple. When you think about yourself, just think about yourself. Who are you? Or better yet, what makes you different than the person sitting next to you? Okay? What makes me me and you you? Okay, so obviously we have the two bodies. Okay, that's clear. But if you ask yourself, okay, let's say a deeper question. When I say that I know somebody, I really know somebody, what does it mean? You know how they look? No, it doesn't mean that, because you can see people and they look, doesn't mean you know them. When you know somebody, or you know yourself, what is it that you know? Let's try to give some words to this. When I say I'm myself, what does it mean?
What animates you?
Yeah, okay, so what animates me? So what? Is it my thoughts, my personality, behaviors, what else? Beliefs, connections, okay. These are all good words.
Essence.
Okay, essence is a whole other word, but we're not going to get to essence. We're talking about, these are all good descriptions of
What kind of ice cream they like.
okay, your likes, your dislikes, your connections, your distinctiveness, the way you think about things, the way you interact with life. Okay, these are all in the realm of experiences, right? These are all experiences. Let's say a person likes ice cream, doesn't like it. It's an experience. A person likes this person, doesn't like that person. These are all within the realm of experiences. So experience, you can have a physical experience. Okay, let's say you're doing something. You can have an emotional experience, you're feeling something. You can have an intellectual experience, you're understanding something. Okay. Who is the person that's having the experience? Okay, so you said all these good definitions of self, which is my likes and dislikes, the way I think, what I know, how I feel, who I do, what I don't feel. This is all part of my self, and that's part of your self. That's the experiences part of self, right? Mm-hmm. That's my experiences. Okay, so who is the experiencer? Let me ask a very simple question. Okay, wait, one second. If I'm having a feeling, let's say I'm doing something. I'm knocking at a hammer and a nail, right? It's an actual doing. It's a physical action. Can I observe myself knocking in the nail?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can. You can look, I'm knocking in the nail, right? You watch yourself knocking in the nail. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. How about an emotion? You're feeling angry, let's say. I'm not saying you should feel, but let's say you're feeling angry. Mm-hmm. You're feeling sad. You're feeling happy. Did you ever step back and say, why am I feeling sad? Or why am I being angry? I should have some self-control. Right? Does that ever happen, this inner narrative? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's an experience that you're having, that you're feeling the anger, and then there's the experiencer that's observing yourself having the anger. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go even deeper. Let's say you're having a thought. You're thinking something. And the thought is not a good thought. Then you want to sit, you realize you're walking down the street, you think this terrible thought, really I should do this to that other person, really it's a terrible thought. Then you say, how can I have that thought? It's crazy. So there's all of a sudden, there's a somebody that becomes aware of yourself having the thought and says, don't have the thought. Who is this experiencer? Who's this? Who's this guy? Who's this little guy that's having the experience? And I want to tell you, you could do a very simple, practical, meditative experience if you want. Next time you do this, don't do this now, but next time you're alone in a room, look at a wall, a blank wall, and observe yourself observing yourself watching a wall. Okay? And then observe a deeper voice telling yourself that I should observe myself watching the wall. Then a deeper voice that tells myself to tell myself deeper watching the wall. Do this until you go crazy. You get to a point where you get to a place which is called pure awareness, where you're no longer, there's multi-layers of self, which is all part of the experiences. Then there's a backdrop. The backdrop is the experiencer. Okay? We got that word? So this is where all the experiences are impressed. You have a feeling. Okay, but there's a me that's having a feeling. There's a me that's doing this action. There's a me that's thinking this thought. The experiencer is the backdrop. We are, what we said is very is correct. Who we are is basically our experiences. That's the superficial level of self, which is also called our autobiographical self. That's the self that's constantly evolving and changing. We have different experiences constantly, and according to those experiences, we're informing, we're creating this person called me. These are my thoughts, these are my feelings, these are the people that I know, these are people I like, etc., etc., etc. This is all my totality of self. This is the experiences. That total self, where is that self stored? Where is that self? Where's me? Okay, let me ask you another simple question. Okay, if I decide I really like your arm, I like your hands, I really like your arm, you know? I have a technique that we can exchange arms. I give you my arm, you give me your arm. Would I become a little bit more you? Will you become a little bit more me? What do you think? Or let's say, God forbid, a person loses their arm. Do they lose themselves?
At some level they do, but not at the deepest level.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in terms of their personality, in terms of...
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So which part of self, if I exchange with you, would you become me?
Your memories.
That's it. You follow it? The only thing that would actually make me you, and you me, is if we took our memories and exchanged them. If you have all my memories, then you would be me. If I would have all your memories, I would be you. We'd have different bodies. Eventually, I would start looking like you, and you would start looking like me, because the memories would inform the body, and the body would react a certain way. Right? So, the totality of self is stored as our memory. Can that be, is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, that's the experience of self. So when I say I'm me, you're you, it's not our bodies, it's our memory. So if I'm having an experience right now in the present, that experience is a new experience that's now becoming a new part of my memory. So every moment, we are our memory experiencing the present. That's who we are. Very simple definition. We're our total memory experiencing the present. The new experience makes more memory. Okay, this is very important to understand when we get a little deeper in terms of the afterlife and the soul's journey. But this is the first step that we have. So
But if you lost your memory completely, you're asserting that you wouldn't be you, but...
No, that's conscious memory.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's conscious memory. That's a good point. Okay, so we have here a little bit of a definition now of the soul. A little bit of definition. The definition of the soul is the backdrop that stores our memory. That's a very practical definition. It's the experiencer that stores memory. Which should be, and I'm going to explain this fully, but if the total self is our memory, right, that's what we are. And the memory is constantly evolving because we're having new experiences. And experiences is what is creating the memory, but we are the experiencer, which is the backdrop. So the backdrop is the soul, which is storing all this memory. You follow? Okay, that's the first definition. This will help us understand a lot of the conversation, and this, we're not going to get into this much deeper now. We'll go to a little further on. This explains a little bit about the computer dying. Yeah.
So you're saying the soul retains...
The soul is the backdrop that holds the memory. Okay? It's the experiencer, not the experience. Okay? The experience is finite. It's made up of finite things. I like this, I didn't like that, I had breakfast, I didn't have breakfast, I met this person, I met the other person. These are all finite experiences, and this is constantly writing on a backdrop. Imagine like there's a book, and there's words on the book. The book itself is the soul, the words on the book is our memory, which is self. So when we say that the soul survives after death, and the soul reincarnates, and the soul goes on this whole journey, we're not talking about the spark or the plug of the computer. We're actually talking about all the whole information of the computer. Because what survives is the memory. We can't make new conscious memory when we don't have a body, because the body allows us to have memory. We eat, we sleep, we hear, we smell, we touch. This is all what the impressions of the senses that are creating all this memory. The moment the body passes on, there's no longer a continuous of memory, but the full memory is preserved. So when a person passes on, everything survives. Not always, and this is the process, but this is the general idea.
So it's the hard drive?
Yeah, it's like the hard drive. It's a very good analogy. It's the hard drive. The hard drive. But a hard drive is also like a tangible thing, so it's like an experience. That's why I don't use that word, but it's like the hard drive. It's a good analogy. Let's go back to the great soul. Let's go back to Adam. Okay, so we started the conversation. There's Adam in chapter number 1. There's Adam in chapter number 2. Adam in chapter number 1 is the tree of life. Adam in chapter 2 is the tree of knowledge. Adam in chapter 1 doesn't have a higher dimension of soul, which means he doesn't have free choice. Adam in chapter number 2 gets a dimension of soul, which is free choice. Adam number 1 has Elohim. Adam number 2 has the name of Hashem. Okay. Adam number 1, there are 4-5 levels of soul. Okay? Just to complicate this a little bit more. There are 4 or 5 levels of soul. The first level of soul is called Nefesh. Okay? Nefesh, which is translated as spirit, is consciousness that we share with animals. It's living consciousness. Living consciousness means it's the backdrop that gives rise to a person functioning as a physical being. We're going to understand this a little bit deeper. This is the level of nefesh. Ruach is emotional consciousness. Neshama is mental or intellectual consciousness. And Chaya, spiritual consciousness. So there are different levels of consciousness that we can function on. If we function on a functional consciousness level, then we're just like animals. If we go about our life, we eat, we sleep, we have relationships, we work, and everything we do is purely for survival based. You eat to be healthy so you can eat. Then you're essentially like an animal. I'm not saying this in a I have nothing against animals. It's not the issue. If I was an animal, I would talk differently. But as a human being, we shouldn't be animals. The idea is that if you function on this level, you're basically living to survive, which is the same thing what a plant does and what a tiger does. If you live on this functional base level of living, your level of consciousness is on the state of nefesh. It's instinct-based. It's just like the sun, the tree bends to the sun to receive nutrients. It's just like a zebra runs away from a lion and you go to work. It's the same thing. Everyone's just interested in their own survival. This is the level of nefesh. If you have a higher state of evolved soul, or if you live in a higher level of consciousness, then you move into a state of ruach, which is that your existence is not purely instinctual based, and it's not reactive emotions. It's not this person insulted me, therefore I'm sad, and it's sunny in the morning, therefore I'm going to have a good day. If you wake up in the morning and it's raining, and you say today's not going to be a good day, that's a reactive emotion. A reactive emotion means you're living in a level of nefesh, of an animal consciousness. The outside is dictating to you how the inside is going to feel. If someone says, by the way, you're beautiful, and you feel really good about yourself, then you're basically dictating your self-awareness or self-esteem is based on the other person. If someone says, by the way, you look like crap, and you feel terrible about yourself, then again, it's the same thing. It works both ways. If you're taking a compliment that seriously, then that means you're living with another person. If you're taking an insult that seriously, then you're living with another person. The same thing, if you wake up in the morning and it's a beautiful day, you're sitting on the beach, and you say, wow, today's such a wonderful day, and I'm going to have a great day. Okay, You probably will, because the sun is shining. But you know the inverse of that conversation is when it rains and it's dark, you say, today's going to be a miserable day. Who decided how your day is going to be? The weather. Or the other schmuck that tells you if you look good, you don't look good. That's the person that decides how you're going to feel about yourself. Really? Someone says you're good, you feel good. Someone says you're bad, you feel bad. Really? But this is the level of consciousness that unfortunately most people live. This is the level of nefesh. It's instincts. It's reaction. It's reactive emotions. A person cuts you off, you get angry. The person comes angry, you get angry worse, and that person didn't say hello, etc., etc. And you can do all this narrative to yourself. This is the level of nefesh. If you have a more evolved level of consciousness, you work into a level of ruach, which means that your emotions is not dependent on the outside, but it's created in the inside. That you choose your emotions. That how you're going to live emotionally, your emotional state of how you're going to live your life is internally based. It's lived from the inside out. That's the level of ruach. The level of neshama, the higher level of being, is not only your emotions, but also your thoughts are in your control. Okay, so this is already a more subtle level and higher level of living. Because most people have zero control about anything. They're just completely dangling on the emotions of other and the impressions of other people. Then you say, okay, there are certain people that they work out their emotional level and they say, they become angry and they say this is not correct. Or if they feel sad, they say they should really become more happy. Okay, so they're working on themselves and they're making sure that their emotions are not purely reactive and it's proactive. Then there's a higher level of living, which is that not only are you in control of your feelings, but you're also in control of your thoughts, which is a very big level to live on. Because if you think about it, how many people are in control of their thoughts? I know everyone thinks they're in control of their thoughts, but do you ever try to think about one thing while you walk down the street? Let's say you're walking from here, it's 81st, and you're going to walk to 80 to 79, 2 streets, just very short. You're walking to the grocery on 79th Street. And all you have to do is, and you decide before you're leaving the house, that for the next 7 minutes, I'm going to hold one thought. I'm going to think about something. I'm going to think about a person. I'm going to think about an idea. One thought. And what happens? The moment you step outside, you're holding this thought. I want to think about this thought. It starts drizzling. And then you think about, it's starting to rain. Then you think about, what happened to my umbrella? Then you think about, maybe I lost my umbrella. Then you think about, I don't own an umbrella. Then you realize, why don't you own an umbrella? Because you borrowed it from a friend of yours, and that friend never returned. That person's such a terrible person, didn't return. And there's a whole narrative, and the time you get to the store, you're in Hawaii on the island. And you're completely lost your train of thought. This is a very, don't feel bad, this is the way most people think. It's just like people have reactive emotions, they have reactive thoughts. You walk down the street, you hear a siren, you start thinking about the police. You see it's raining, you start thinking about rain. You see a person with a yellow nose, you start thinking about noses. Yeah, whatever is put right in front of you, that's what you think about. I don't know why that. But whatever, something. I guess if you saw a yellow nose, you would think about a yellow nose. The point is that you're not in control of your thoughts. So, in very simple language, these are states of consciousness that you want to elevate yourself, and you're not only functioning on a functional level that you have control, not only on an emotional level that you're not reactive, but also on a mental state that your mind is in your control. This is called neshama. This is very loosely. We have to get into this a little deeper. Then the higher level is also your spiritual state of reality. That not only are you functioning on a functional level correctly, on an emotional level correctly, and on a mental level correctly, but also in a spiritual state that you're functioning in a correct state. These are going to be the schematic order of the 4 levels of the soul. Now let's get back to Adam. Does anyone have a time? I don't know we're holding
We're
the time.
like at 6:15,
So
so
what do
another
we...
15 minutes
Okay, fine.
for questions,
All right.
if you want.
Yeah, no, I think we should ask questions. I mean, that's...
What was the last Hebrew level?
Chaya. Okay. If you don't know the Hebrew, it's fine. It's just the main thing is to get the structure here. Okay. Does everyone follow along? More or less? Or more than less? That's good.
Although in terms of structuring, why did you fudge earlier about 4 or 5?
Because Yechida doesn't reincarnate.
Thanks.
Okay.
What is it?
That was someone. Well, yes, that's another. Let's move one thing at a time. We wanted to talk about the soul and the reincarnation. Adam, we said before, Adam in creation story number 1, the image of Adam is very important. It's not Adam as a he, right? Even though people use it as he, it's not a he. It's a he and a she. It's back to back, and it's both. It's both a male and female. This Adam being, we're going to just say he, just it's easier to speak this way, but it's not a he. This Adam expands the entire creation from one end of the earth to the other. Now, spiritually, this means that just as the human race is the descendants, are seen as the descendants of Adam and Eve, of Adam and Chava, also on a spiritual level, the souls are all rooted within the great soul of Adam. So just like genetically, we're all rooted in the great body of Adam, spiritually, we're all rooted in the great soul of Adam. Now, this is the soul of Adam. We have to talk about this for a few moments. The soul of Adam, we said that the body, so imagine there's someone standing right next to you. Of course, it's not literal. Okay, imagine there's someone standing right next to you. And we said that in the narrative of chapter number 1, which is the tree of life, this Adam expanded throughout all the universes. And then the Adam shrunk to this size, whatever the size, let's say 6 feet. Spiritually, it works the same way. All souls are rooted within the great soul of Adam. In the first narrative, the great soul of Adam is one unified spiritual reality. By eating from the tree of knowledge, the Eitz Hadas, Adam's soul was broken down into shards, into pieces. It was pixelated. So imagine there's a great structure here, and the structure now falls apart. On a physical level. So here's a physical being, let's say a puzzle, that looks like a structure of a human being. That's pre-eating from the tree of knowledge. Post-eating from the tree of knowledge, the puzzle falls apart, and you have hundreds of shards of little parts of the puzzle. Okay, just use this as an analogy. Don't get caught up with the literalism of it. Just use this as a metaphor. When a soul post-eating from the tree of knowledge receives, when a person comes down to this world, and at the moment of conception, so there's a formulation of the physical body. There's the beginning of the formulation of the physical body, right? The egg and the sperm come together, and there's the beginning of a fetus, not a fetus, what is it called? Embryo. So this is the beginning of the potential of the human form that you're going to have. The form that you're going to have, the physical body that you're going to have, is going to be a direct expression of the spiritual constitution, the spiritual spark that will animate the body. Remember we said there's an experiencer and the experience. The experiences and the experiencer. The experiencer is all the things that we have. So the moment the embryo is conceived, there's already the beginning of experiences, which means that the embryo is being imprinted by experiences. There's trauma, God forbid, or happiness, or certain people. A mother eats certain foods, and the child likes these foods when they're born. There's already an intake, which means that the embryo is being imprinted with what? With experiences. This small little embryo is a reflection of its spiritual constitution, of a spiritual soul type. So here we have a great soul of Adam. The great soul of Adam now breaks itself into many parts. I'll tell you what the end game is. The end game is to recreate the body of Adam. That's the goal. And I'll explain how this works. But the goal is to recreate the body of Adam, which means to go from the place of duality back to the place of the tree of life, using our free choice. using the free choice that we're given, which means that we move from the tree of life to the tree of knowledge, and now we have to move from the tree of knowledge back into the tree of life through choices that we're going to make. This is the goal, but we'll explain this step by step. Let's imagine person number one receives a soul. So here's the great soul of Adam. The great soul of Adam is a direct reflection of the body of Adam. Now the body of Adam is a structure. There's a head, there's feet, there's hands, right? There's a structure to this body. The way the sages understand the body, and this is going to be a very Jewish idea, is that the body is divided into 613 parts. Right? You're familiar with 613? This is 613 mitzvot. So there's 248 main body parts and 365 main veins and arteries. Which body parts are counted, which veins and arteries are counted is not disclosed, so count whatever parts you want. But anyways, this is the way the metaphysical universe understanding of the body is. The body is structured into 613 parts. Every part of the body is animated. Remember, it's the backdrop, so it's the energy that gives life to the body. So there's the life force within the great soul of Adam that gives life to the right hand of Adam, and there's a life force that gives life force to the left hand of the body of Adam. You following? Mm-hmm. But now the body breaks itself into many parts. How many parts does it break itself into? 613 parts, because there's 613 parts of the body. Before they were structured as one, and now there's 613 parts. Obviously this doesn't mean literal, because then there will only be 613 people. Think of this more as a holographic image, where every part of the 613 contains 613. So I just want to quickly, because it's a big topic, we have to get into this, but let's just lay the foundation for this idea. Person number one receives one soul. One soul means one little shard, one little spark. Let's assume this soul is connected to the right hand of Adam. Okay? This is the body. The body's broken into parts. The soul is connected to the body. One spark now comes and is reincarnated into person number one. Okay, what's person number one's name? Chaim. Chaim. Okay? That's his name. Chaim receives person number one soul. He receives a soul that comes from the right hand within the great body of Adam. What does it actually practically mean? Okay, so he has a soul from the right hand. What does that mean? It means like this. Every person has their nature, which is their genetics, we receive from our parents. We have our nurture, which is the environment that we're born into, where we have a particular body that we have. We're going to have a certain education, things that were not part of our choice. Okay, at a certain age, when you become mature, you have to start making your own choices. But the environment and the reality that we're born into is not our choice. Seemingly it's not our choice. I will talk if it is our choice or not. But seemingly it's not our choice. This is something that happens to you. This is the body we have. We're born in this century. These are our parents. These are our siblings. Why? Why? The simple answer is because everything that we're gifted with, means the body that we have, the place that we're born with, the family that we have, our parents that we have, our siblings, etc., etc., all these things are conducive to articulate our soul potential. They're given there as the frame, as the tools that will allow us to articulate our soul potential. Person number one receives a soul from the right hand of Adam. That becomes a soul. What does it mean, the right hand of Adam? So the right hand of Adam will be a metaphor for chesed, for kindness. How does person number one shine? How does person number one make sure that his soul, or if it's a woman, her soul, is completely illuminated? By expressing right hand energy. This is very generic, but by expressing right hand energy. What is right hand energy? Giving. So they're born into a family and into an environment and into a situation where they'll be able to give. That's just the framework. Then they're going to have free choice when they become mature, whether they're going to give or not going to give. If Chaim lives his life, or Chaya, this woman, lives her life, and articulates this potential, then their soul becomes illuminated, perfected, reaching its tikkun, and this soul now becomes published in the great soul of Adam. Means it returns to come back into the piece where it was taken from. Here's the. It's like you're putting the pieces of a puzzle. There's the blank. What's the backboard of a puzzle, or whatever it's called? The sheet where you put the pieces of the puzzle on. Person number one lives out his or her full potential, and now they put their soul back into the great soul of Adam. Now the question is a very simple question because we're running a little bit out of time. How do we know what our potential is and what are we supposed to be doing? Of course, we have to develop this much deeper, but it's very, very simple. It's actually not a great mystery. Otherwise, it would be fear. It's very simple. Every person is born with certain natural inclinations. It could be certain types of people you like, certain types of information you like, certain types of things that you like doing, certain things in this world that we are connected with, that when we do them, we feel most alive, most connected. There's also the flip side of that, which is parallel to the positive qualities that we have to pursue, there's also a negative set of emotions that we have to overcome. So let's say a person says, I come from the right soul of Adam, from the right giving soul of Adam. Because whenever I give, whenever I share, whenever I'm open, I feel most alive. I feel most connected. I feel most deep, most connected with myself. And I'm honest about myself. And I do an accounting of my soul, and I say, if I go through a day and I don't do this, I don't feel alive. I don't feel connected. Parallel to that, there's also going to be a negative emotion. If you really follow your life and you scrutinize your life a little bit more clearly, you'll see that there's always one emotion, one or two things that you always struggle with. It could be like maybe you're so kind that you have a problem with discipline. You can't be like you really can't be disciplined, and this is the same thing. Or you're struggling with anger, or judgment, whatever it is. It's some type of negative emotion that constantly keeps on reoccurring. The positive quality that keeps on showing up is the positive quality we have to pursue. Because that's the way we make our particular distinctive soul type shine. That's the way we illuminate our soul. When we attach ourselves with the quality that makes us most us, and we pursue it, that's when we articulate our soul. We're going to talk about in terms of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, because it's on a physical level, it's on an emotional level, it's on an intellectual level, it's on a spiritual level. It's not just one thing. It's not like I really enjoy, playing baseball. I don't know if anyone in this room does that, but I really enjoy playing ball. Okay, that's a very physical thing. That's not the end. There has to be something true on nefesh, ruach, chaya, and then neshama chaya. It has to be true on all four levels. You have to find expressions on all your levels of self. Parallel to the finding of the positive that you have to pursue, there's a parallel thing to that, which is the negative. What are the things in my life that constantly come up in my life? These are particular patterns that I'm always struggling to overcome. Our specific tikkun, which means our correcting the great soul of Adam, because the soul of Adam is now fragmented into the tree of knowledge, which is broken apart into parts. The tikkun of the tree of knowledge is to go back to the tree of life. To get back to the tree of life, we have to make choices. The choices that we make is that we have to pursue the positive qualities that make us be ourselves and pursue it. And the tikkun also is to overcome those negative qualities that keep on pulling us down. You can't say, this is something that I struggle with, but I would rather not focus on these things. I would rather focus on something else because, okay, listen, I'm an angry person. What can I do? This is part of who I am. That's not an excuse. That's why you're here. You're here to work this out. Okay, maybe you won't work this out completely. I can't guarantee that you work it out completely, but at least 10%, 20%, maybe 100%. But you have to make that a life mission of pursuing the things that are positive to create your tikkun, and overcoming the things that are negative. That's the way we're recreating the great soul of Adam and entering back into the tree of life. We didn't touch upon anything of reincarnation yet, and we didn't touch about anything, we touched upon some things, but we didn't really delve into it. But it's getting a little late, and I think there's a lot of questions. So we're going to open up the questions, and God willing, next week we'll continue further this conversation. Yeah, sure.
So, if I'm like a right side person, a chesed person, I have my things to pursue and I have my challenges. But isn't there a concept that the gvura side I have to balance with also?
What do you mean?
That if I'm a chesed person, it feels like knowing what I am, there are challenges and gifts within what I am, but I always thought I'm supposed to get balance with the other pieces.
The other pieces?
Like gvura, let's say.
Because you struggle with gvura?
Because I have almost no gvura. I'm a chesed person.
Yeah, but the question is that negative?
That's what I thought. That's what I'm asking.
That's really a question. If you find, let's say you're a parent, or you're or for yourself, you're always about giving, and you're giving away all your money, and you're living homeless. You're homeless because I'm my heart pours for everyone out, and I don't take anything myself. Okay, that's a negative thing, correct. So then you have to work on learning how to. So that's the flip side of gvura. That's the giving, and there's no discipline. That's the gvura part of the chesed. If you have too much chesed, you have to have gvura. Right. You have to know where is it in terms of positive, pursuing it, and where does it overlap with something that's negative. But these two things will always be parallel to each other. There'll be something positive and its opposite.
The way I was hearing what you were saying is like a certain person's whole thing might be chesed, but
your thing might be chesed for the positive, but the overcoming
struggles have to do with that.
The struggles have to do with the gvura.
But what about you being from one piece of, I don't know.
What do you mean?
If you're from the right piece, how can your challenges be from a different piece?
No, the challenge in chesed is to have gevura. I didn't really explain this in greater detail, but because it's a holographic image, which means Adam in its perfected state is a unified whole. Unified whole means that everything is balanced. The right hand is balanced with the left hand. They became fragmented into pieces, which means souls only have a spark, which means it only has the chesed. But the chesed also includes the gvura from the state of the unified structure of Adam before it was broken into parts. That's why part of our tikkun is to make sure that we balance it with the gvura part. The pursuing of the positive, which means that it's conducive. The situation in life is conducive, and the body that we have, and the physical appearance that we have, and the parents, and etc., all these things are conducive to help us articulate this chesed. Parallel to that, there's also going to be the struggles of overcoming the things that are pulling us into the negative. Yeah.
What's actually beautiful about it is that actually what this imagery indicates is that you can't actually fix it unless you connect
to everything,
to where you come from.
Correct. That's correct. Is that?